Colin Wright reporting there. So, do we want to see Macbeth now recast as a good guy? With us to talk about our ongoing fascination with long-dead kings like Macbeth and Richard III is Dr. Ben Edwards, who's a lecturer in heritage and archaeology. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Hello.
time to be a lecturer in heritage and archaeology, isn't it?
It's a boom subject at the moment, absolutely.
What do you think about this then? Macbeth as a good guy, do you buy that?
Well, the history is one thing, but I think, and this with the Richard III stuff in the news recently as well, there's obviously a focus on these historical figures has come to the fore again. And I think it's interesting because what we're seeing is the way people connect to like the past, you know, and the underdog might be a big thing in here as well, sort of these vilified figures who are suddenly more popular. But all of this popularity of these figures, I think, is to do with people searching for somebody they can relate to in the past, you know, some sort of historical figure they can hook onto and become interested in. It's about people's identity and what they can take from the past and, you know, the sort of stories they can tell about it. It's fascinating, really.
So as much as the character, it's the search, you really think, that's pulling people in. It's mystery, intrigue.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the thing with certainly with Richard III and certainly with Macbeth probably as well, because it's somebody that you know about because you hear about it in Shakespeare and you have these ideas about who they might be. But then, especially with Richard III under the car park, there's this search for them. And if you're searching for the real figure rather than the propaganda you might have heard from Shakespeare or something like that, people love the story. They love the search. It's part of people connecting with the past, you know, that kind of thing.
Although one thing I didn't quite understand with the Richard III thing is everybody said this will change the way we view him, but obviously we didn't really learn anything more about his character from his bones,
No,
did we?
that's the interesting thing, you see, because there's been a lot of people say, oh, this is, he shouldn't be a vilified figure anymore, you know, perhaps he was a good king. Well, really, all we've done is found where he was buried. I mean, I think we know where Joseph Stalin was buried, but it doesn't mean we think he's a nice chap, necessarily. The thing with Richard III was we discovered he didn't have a withered arm, but these bones will never tell you whether he murdered a couple of princes in a tower or not. I mean, to be honest, I'd be surprised if he didn't. Dynastic murder was quite popular in the late medieval period, to say the least. So, yeah.
So it all adds to the myth and the intrigue. Obviously, you do it all the time. You're out there looking for things.
Yes.
But people, how could they perhaps get involved themselves? We talk about people getting swept up in all of this.
Yes, I mean, I think that sort of local history and archaeology and community history, things like that, it's something that I do every now and again with my work. But it's actually an area which people can really easily get involved. Even here in Manchester, for example, there's a range of local history societies, local archaeology work going on all the time. It's very, very easy to get involved. People like the Council for British Archaeology is a great way, a portal on the internet for people to get involved, to look it up.
I'm surprised you say that. I'd have thought it was something that only highly qualified people like you would be able to go and risk disturbing a site or something.
Well, no, I mean, obviously we run the things, but I think the important thing about archaeology and history, especially the work that we do out in the field, is that the whole point of the past is that it's everybody's. You know, archaeology, history belongs to the nation, doesn't it? And even as an academic, who pays for my wages? It's people's, you know, it's taxes and so forth. So we think it's central to the mission of what we do in the universities is to get people involved. It's the whole point, really.
No, you don't want people tinkering per se, obviously.
No, not really.
Tampering with any sites. We totally appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. We'd get quite cross if people did that too much. But no, I mean, if we're here as experts to facilitate everyday, you know, the public to get involved. You know,
and in Scotland, obviously, they want to tap into that very much now.
Absolutely,
with Macbeth.
it's part of their identity, you know, and that's why people get involved. It's part of national identity for the people who are local identity, sometimes personal identities. You know, people they can recognise in their own heritage. It's really important, and we think it's on a wider point as well. If people can get involved, there's whole loads of evidence that it helps with stuff like community cohesion, sense of identities and places and pasts and stuff like that.
And at a time when we're talking about history on the syllabus and what kids are taught in school, it's interesting timing, isn't it?
Yes.
Dr. Ben Edwards, thank you very much indeed. Fascinating
Pleasure.
subject. Thank you very much indeed. 8:49, you're watching Breakfast from BBC.